What's up, guys? David DeSell here, your host of the Business with the Boys podcast, and I am joined here by my Coca-Cola sipping friend, Landon Troyer. How you doing?
What is up? Doing well. Doing well. Good week. I get to come down and see your ass and your much cooler bride. So that was awesome. Wish we would have got a
You're
little more
welcome.
time, but yeah, it's always good to one, get down to Florida this time of year and two, it's good to see you guys, especially Kennedy. I don't really get to see her like I do you all the
Yeah.
time, even though it's virtually. So yeah,
Yep.
it's a good week. Good week.
Yeah, and enjoy your last few sips of Coca-Cola because with RFK now making America healthy again, that may
It's coming
be
for me.
pride right out of your fingers.
Yeah, get that cereal out there and the Coca-Colas, the sugars out of the Coca-Colas, you know?
Love it. Well, let's dive in. So, in this episode, this was actually someone, frankly, it's like, how have we not come across him yet? Because in talking with him, he works with like half of our guest list that we've had, on the show. Blake Berke, and first of all, he was just the man. He's got an amazing jawline. He
He
just
does that. Yeah.
he's a stud. But he also has quite a bit of experience in helping companies grow and scale. And, his passion is just to read his bio quickly, his passion is helping leaders and business owners achieve their biggest goals by bringing clarity to the company's vision, mission, and strategic business objectives. And also helping teams operate as cohesive units. Many times, teams may be leaving potential on the table, and Blake finds joy in helping those businesses achieve better alignment and facilitating difficult to hear insights that need to be addressed to propel businesses forward. And what's interesting about Blake is he works with companies that, do a couple, 2, 3 million bucks, but he also has companies that are going to do 1 billion over the next couple of years. Like his experience is freaking vast.
Fast and wide. Yeah.
Yeah. What were
And
uh what were some of your takeaways?
well, one, I mean, yeah, much like you, I'm like I have personally being in Omaha, have heard Blake's name no less than 100 times, right? And it was always good shit. Like, guy's a stud. And so I got to give a quick shout out to our boy Brent Summer because I know he's a listener for making the official introduction. So shout out Brent there on that. Appreciate you. But he actually introduced me to him on kind of a side business of mine and thinking that Blake would be a potential great fit there. And we got to talking, and I'm like, yo, like you're a perfect supplement and complement to David and I's business. And the thing that I love most about him is he's been in our seat, right? He is a business owner and he's owned multiple businesses and exited multiple businesses. So he's not just preaching, he's practicing what he preaches, right? And he's
Hmm.
lived it. And then, come to find out, we've got a ton of mutual clients that he's already working with, and there will be significantly more, I feel, going in the future because he's going to be
100%.
a
I
great
mean,
asset for us for sure, having to be able to refer him business and know that he's a great implementer for sure.
100%. And with all the folks who are local to Omaha, a lot of the folks that he works with, and the folks listening to this, I mean, they should be using Landjet. Landjet are our partners that help keep this show going. And if you're unfamiliar with what Landjet is, it's basically an office on wheels. You can be super productive, have someone drive you. It's frankly basically the cost of an Uber, a little bit more, of course, but basically the same thing. And, think about, how much time you can get back in your day. I mean, shit, Landon, you know this, but I'm building a barber shop in my house right now to save, the 30 minutes that it takes to go to and from my barber because I'm going to reallocate that time and make way more than the extra that I'm, paying him to come to me. So I'm a big believer when you're running a business, try to buy back as much of your time as possible. So for those of you who are interested in checking out Landjet. Email Rachel@landjet.com. But with that said, let's go and chat with Blake Berke. Stay till the end. I'm ashamed to say this, but Landon got me very, very good at the end with a joke that I think will make you laugh, and he busted my balls about it once again when he saw me in person. So stick to the end if you want a good laugh.
Enjoy, folks. This is the good one.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces. That to me, you really playing with your life. I'm about to come and run it all back.
Blake, I'm surprised it's taken us this long to have you on the podcast. I know we were just before we started recording, you made mention that, about half the folks that we've had on here are either friends or clients of yours. So maybe we saved the best to last, but either way, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's there's so much overlap that I figured, like you said, kind of hard to believe it's taken this long, but glad to be on and happy to chat with you guys.
Nice. Well, we appreciate you hopping in, and then Landon, you two knew each other for a while before this, or how did you guys meet?
I would say I definitely knew of Blake because again, Omaha's a small town and Blake's I mean, we have a number of mutual clients actually, and the synergies in what Blake does and what like you and I do on the coaching consulting side of things they're pretty synonymous with each other. So I had always heard his name, and then had one of my best buddies from college actually made the official introduction, and so yeah, it was a no brainer once we got to chat, and it was like yeah, we knew our circles were very much the same for sure.
I uh I know I'm all the way in Florida, but I kind of feel like I'm a Nebraskan because I'm getting involved
You're
in
getting
all these
there.
small circles.
Yeah, when you
Uh,
get in the Midwest, and I'm originally out of Sioux Falls, and so it's funny how like communities collide. And I know Lane and I have been socially connected for quite some time, and it's like, hey, I know who he is, but I don't really know him well. And then when you finally intersect and start interacting, and you're like, oh man, how many of our clients are the same type of people, all trying to do the same thing, and then just finding ways that you can work together. And one of the cool things is I think one of my missions and what I do just in life in general is just measure my success and what's going on based on the number and size of positive ripples that you create in the world. And it's like, folks like yourself just being connected, it's just one more avenue to say, hey, you got to meet these guys, or hey, you know them too. So it's really cool to have these circles collide officially. So this is, yeah, it's great to get to know you better.
For sure. Well, let's dive in. And for those of you who are tuning into this episode, to help set the stage, whether you own a business and it is just starting or extremely mature and doing millions or hundreds of millions in revenue or more, or you've yet to collect your first dollar, or you're thinking about starting a business, this episode, I promise you, and Blake, don't let me down, but I promise you will be well worth the listen. We're going to be talking about how you should go about running your business, what that operating system, so to speak, looks like. And this is something that myself, Landon, and Blake all are aligned on in the way that we think about how businesses should be run. So just to help set the stage now, before we get there, though, Blake, walk us through your background. How'd you get started in business? Walk us through some of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the very beginning. I mentioned I'm from Sioux Falls, and I know it's a generic way of describing how I was raised, but I like to just use the term I was essentially a food stamp kid. So oldest of five kids, raised in Sioux Falls. Neither parents went to college. Ended up being that first generation college grad, and so that right there foundationally sets the tone as far as I think work ethic and some of the things that just it's that family of origin story that really helps people have different levels of drive and what motivates them. So, and wound up going to school at Nebraska and in the business side of things, accounting, finance, and then stayed here in Omaha. So short version of that is worked for a large corporation, ConAgra, for a summer. Thought I wanted to do corporate finance and realized I can't sit in a cubicle all day. I can't do this. And so needed an alternative, found a similar option, but knew it wasn't the forever answer. Actually, the CFO of a large automotive group here in town now. I don't know if you guys know Alex Morton. He'd be another great guest. So he and I are
He's
buddies.
on the list.
He's on the list. He's a good dude. Man, he's really running he's got so many irons in the fire. It's amazing.
His
So
wife is actually on the list as well.
she
She's
should be
she's
as well.
impressive.
He
Yeah.
should be as well. And yeah, so he grabbed me one summer and he's like, "Did you ever think about going the CPA route?" And so ended up getting a couple extra credit hours, got my CPA here in Omaha. And like I said, that's like you get thrown to the fire, right? And you learn a lot. Financials speak to you in a different way. But what really spoke to me was the opportunity to jump into private business. So did that. Spent about 8.5 years growing a construction company. So came in, we 5X'd in about 7.5 years, and became an owner in that business, started in a financial capacity. And then the stuff I do now for businesses is that's really what I was doing in business, was putting that operating system in place, holding people accountable to it, and it just drove results. So you had a clear vision, you had the execution plan, and then you just had the accountability piece put in place behind it. So since then, I departed out of that business. I've now taken a equity position in a few small businesses back home, and then I consult most of the time. So consult on these operating systems in the businesses, teach and educate teams on how to do it, and then actually kind of hold their hand in the beginning and then facilitate their discussions ongoing.
I'm surprised that you have your CPA because you also have a personality, and usually it's one or the other.
I was on the audit side. Don't ask me tax questions, but if you want to look at your P&L and your balance sheet and give you about five problems I see right off the bat, if you can't come up with problems to solve, just give me your P&L and your balance sheet, and I'll probably come up with a couple for you. So I probably should have been selling CPA services, but you know what? It diversifies you, and yeah, probably would have gone a different route from a personality perspective, but it worked. It's given me a bunch of tools to use.
Well, and you get just the fact that you have some leathers, behind your name, I'm sure helps with, some credibility as well. Before we get into some of the consulting that you do now, you had made mention, which I wasn't aware of, that you have some equity positioned in some businesses. So if I'm listening to this show and I'm like, I don't know if I want to start and run a business on my own, but there's this business over here, maybe I can become an owner there. But I'm curious to know like what value I could add to that. Walk us through like what pulled you in that direction and how'd you sort of start to manufacture those deals and slide yourself in there?
Yeah, and those are the harder ones to come by. I mean, I think when you start working with people who maybe are the most passionate about the idea or like the strongest operators, they're usually fearful to bring people in. They see the equity coming off the table, and it's a big ask. It's their identity, and so those are tougher to come by, but they're also some of my favorite because now you have a piece of the pie. I'm incentivized to succeed just like you are, and it's no longer this fee-based arrangement. And so that's what makes it my favorite version of doing it. And so sourcing them, one of that, I think the biggest piece of sourcing them is you have to have that trusting relationship. And so, I've had a few opportunities where it was more a referral or an introduction, and those are the hardest ones to get across the finish line because you almost need to date before, you get
Mhm.
married. Because it's a business marriage. It really is. And it's a hard thing to unwind. And so you want to get it right on the front end. So yeah, it's more like I had established trusting relationships with these folks in the beginning, and then my track record existed. And then in my case, I'm not an active operator in any of those, but it was a strategic alignment where the value that I bring to those businesses was worth an equity stake, even knowing I wasn't an operator. And so the things I do for those businesses, it's bringing the experience that I talked about. We were Inc. 5000 consecutive years in a maturity, 35-year-old business. That doesn't happen. Knowing this operating system model and taking those experiences and bringing them in, it solves the headaches. It saves people from having to go through those experiences themselves bringing me in. And so I don't really take a day-to-day role in those businesses. You can get into the weeds of it. And in all situations where I'm in those businesses, they're actually S corporations. The reason being is, in an S corporation, you have to have distributions equal to your percent ownership when you do it, but you can actually take care of compensation for active operators separately. So in all those cases, my active operators get salaries that are equal to the value they bring on the day to day. And then the equity is for that ownership value, higher level stuff. And so created those relationships. And then, yeah, it took time. It took a lot of time. But yeah, I don't know if that answered all your questions on that.
Well, it starts to, and if I'm hearing you correctly, you didn't say this directly, but what you did was you, previous to getting involved in those businesses, you proved that what you do is actually valuable. You went out and did something first, and then when you had that, call it, positive and successful rap sheet, you're able to share that, with these folks and say, hey, you can figure this out on your own, or you can loop me in, and I'll take whatever it was, 5, 10 years of experience, and help you implement this stuff in 12 months, type of vibe.
Yep. Yeah. And I think in my case, it's the value driver. I think there's two options, which is you just go buy the business, and you plug in an operator. And at the same time, you're going to have to show your value, or people aren't going to respect what you do anyways. And so it's just how you maybe start the relationships different. I bought the business, then I showed here's my value and my operator, or you show the value and then have the opportunity. And I think what I've learned along the way, I've actually exited two of those positions now, is even if you're really kind of doing the hold company mentality and you're just trying to bring value, is you only have so much time and energy in a day. And so I think that so many people are like, oh, I want to own 10, 12, 15, 20 companies under this hold company. And I would just encourage, listeners to think about it, which is, where can I put my energy to have the strongest focus and greatest results without, one, not delivering my best to the people they deserve it, and where's my energy serving people that is fulfilling to me. And just hit a couple of positions where it's like I'm just better off exiting, even though we could continue going on this journey, but the time is right for me to say I have to put my energy in different places. But everyone's journey along that is a little bit different.
Well, and you strike me as a guy similar to myself where you're not just going to half-ass anything. So it's like if I can't be all in and provide max value, I would just rather back away from the deal, right? Like I'm either all in or I'm all out generally.
Yeah, and that's kind of what was happening in those. And and it's like also size of business. It's like, what's the return on my time? I would tell you, one, I stay in. I love it because the people I work with, the relationships, it will never ever be the biggest, most profitable company in the world, and that's not our goal. But also, that's an evaluation tool is like, what is their time, and dollar investment on what I do, and sometimes hard decisions come with that. But I always say go bigger now. I used to think small deals were the way to go. They seem less scary, but I think the big deals and the small deals take just as much time and effort. So much more focused on kind of that 10x bigger mindset as much as possible.
You have a lot of, I'm sure you're familiar with these folks, like 10X, that you just said, like Grant Cardone, and then, going from a fee model to an equity model makes me think of Alex Hermosi. I'm sure you're familiar with both those guys.
Yeah, yeah, and I hit a point where you listen to a million podcasts and you read all these books, and I'm trying to do my best to just hyper focus on a few knowledge experts and just take those pertinent things. Like I'm starting to believe more than ever is kind of just like pick your resources, stick to it, listen to them a bunch of times, and go with it versus knowing all these different things. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think it's a blend of all of those things. Did real estate investing in the past. Some of it's from some of those influencers and thought leaders, some of the ones you mentioned. And so yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head there.
On your website, and before I share this on your website, let me tee this up. So one of my goals for this episode, that is both a selfish and selfless goal, is what I would love to do is there's plenty of books on operating systems, like Traction that talks about EOS. I know that a lot of what you do has EOS like mechanisms to it with your own spin on it as well. And those, books take, few weeks, few days, to consume. So selfishly, when I come across a business owner, Landon comes across a business owner, I want to be able to share this episode with them and have them be like, oh, I can run my business like this and actually take action on it. And then for you, which is more of the selfless reason on our end, being able to have a succinct, call it 40-minute, 30-minute, whatever it is, episode that you can share with the people that are considering working with you, where you're like, hey, check out this episode, and you'll get the gist of what this is all about. So, with that in mind, for the structure for the remainder of this, on your website, it says helping entrepreneurs and leadership teams achieve their biggest goals. So to me, that's like the big thing. And then it becomes, okay, cool, that sounds great. Then your subtitle is by guiding them to be more focused, cohesive, and effective. So my
Mhm.
general question, it's one word, how?
How? So yeah, you mentioned, I've got a background with the EOS system. So when I talked about, 5Xing a business in 7 years, that's really what I was doing in the business, was taking that traditional EOS model and plugging it in. So when we talk about achieving the biggest goals, and I've taken it my own direction, and part of that is what are your goals? And I think that this happens all the time. I think of, I've got a handful of clients that do 9-figure revenue. Some of them close, they'll do 1 billion in revenue annually in the next year or two. In fact, a couple of them will be. So, but the thing is even groups that big, is the question mark I have is, where does this business see itself? Where do you see it being in 7 to 10 years from now? And we talk about it because, some of the answers are, oh yeah, we talked about this and this would be really cool. And it's usually like having a drink or on the fire, at a table, on the patio, be like, did anybody write this down? Like, are we actually going to revisit this and all get aligned on it? And the thing about it is really, I don't run into situations where that ever happens. So do we have a clear vision in the first place? Because while our actions today don't necessarily always, they're not always with the 10-year in mind. Sometimes we're just putting out fires in front of us. Is we need to have the directional correctness in the first place. So you hop on a plane in LA, you're flying to New York, and you're just 1% off path long enough, you're not going to wind up where you think you're going to end up. So one, do we have the vision? Can we get aligned on it? And then can we start making strategic decisions that actually move us closer to it? So we're not seeking perfection in it. We know we're going to be wrong. There's going to be deviations, but we got to have that guiding North Star that says, here are the major goals of what we're trying to accomplish. And maybe it's, I want to go ring the bell on the stock exchange. Maybe it's I just want to do, really organic, nice growth that, continues to grow the business. There is no right or wrong, but we need a direction, because if we don't have it, people get really confused and misaligned. So how do we achieve our biggest goals? One, we should probably talk about what they are and agree to them. So once that's in place, and then we start to understand the business better. We talk about things about, what's our mission and purpose and what are our value systems? So cultural, what gets us out of bed in the morning, what we're best at, and things of that nature. What ends up happening about that cohesive piece about working together to actually make it happen, that's that execution piece. And so we talk about, a 3-year goal, 1 year, and the quarterly objectives, and they all have to be aligned. And so I think, you've definitely had this happen where I ask clients, what were your goals last year? And so many times it's, oh, we had goals. We had some goals, and like, what were they? Like, oh, let me go back and remember what they were, and be like, oh, so you don't even remember what they were.
It's like
What did you
resolutions.
yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
what did you get? Did you get them done? Well, kind of, and be like, well, you didn't have the systems in place in your business or in your life to actually check in on those things and make sure we're making progress. So we set the 1 year, we set the 1 year, and we set the quarter, and then I help leadership teams put these tools in place that allow for accountability to happen. That says, hey, we actually are making progress on it. I take away the micromanagement feel. I take away the personal attack feel. And if you're executing on a quarterly basis that's aligned to your 1 year goal, and your 1 year is aligned to your three, and your three is aligned to the 7 and 10, then why are we not going to hit the 7 to 10? And so those are what I do with businesses, and then help put tools in place that allow them to do those things, and actually make that progress. And it never fails that as long as you're willing to set a clear plan and then actually do the work to say, yep, we're actually going to execute on it, never fails that people move forward and continue to grow and hit their targets each and every time.
Well, and I think a lot of it, Blake, correct me if I'm wrong, is just having people buy in, right? I know accountability is one thing, but it's like if you can get them to state, like you said, what gets them out of bed in the morning, what gets them excited, and get them bought into it, and just give them 1 to 2 daily tasks that move that needle forward. Like you said, it's a crawl that ends up into a marathon, but it gets you to the finish line, right?
Yeah, so if anybody's in business and they tell you that their goal is not to make money, they're lying to you. Now, there's always a bigger purpose, but we're a capitalistic society in the US. And if your risk adjusted return is not good, you shouldn't be in business. You should just go work for somebody because it's just not worth it. So if you have a bigger purpose and mission and why, and you actually can go execute on that, and what you deliver to people brings value, the money will follow. So now we talk about that sub layer, and this is that buy-in piece. People in the business, the people you want in your business, want to see you succeed and win. So when you win, they feel like they win. So yeah, how do you do that? How do you get that buy-in? This is actually probably I'd say there's two things that I'm regularly running into with business owners from here's the issues I'm having. One of them is our roles and responsibilities aren't clear. Hey, the guy in this position is just not doing his job, and I just can't get him to do his job. And the question is, but does he really clearly know what his role and responsibility is in the first place? And does he know what winning looks like? So that's step number one. Like, let's build the structure out that says, here's your job, here's what's asked of you, and here's even a metric that says if you hit this thing, you're winning, and if you win, I win, and if I win, we all win. And so clear roles, clear responsibilities, which creates the buy-in, right? Because they're seeing the success. And then that next piece is accountability. And so many owners come in and just go, my people, the generation today, they just aren't the same. There's no accountability. We just need more accountability. And my challenge to them every time is, okay, well, how do you get more accountability out of somebody? And the thing is there never is a good answer, because we don't just make people just don't become more accountable. What ends up happening is by us being the best leaders we can be and the best managers we can be creates accountability. So are there people who are self-accountable? Sure. But as leaders and managers, that's what drives the accountability. So now you got buy-in, you know what you're supposed to do. We know if we're winning. And if I'm a good leader and manager of you, which is giving you a clear picture of where we're going and a bigger purpose, a bigger mission, then yeah, now you're bought in, and culturally, you're right. That momentum just helps you just continue to row in the right direction.
Well, it's interesting. I had this realization as you were going through that. Companies that experience a lot of turnover in their staff, if they're not doing a good job defining the roles and responsibility and the definition of winning for that particular role, that role is going to continue to turn over, because
I would say not even for that particular role, right? For that individual, right? You got to figure out what that actual individual wants to accomplish. And if they're not the right ask for that seat, then either get them off the bus or get them into a different seat, right? Like, if people are excited about what they want to do and go, it's you shouldn't have to really motivate them.
So
Put the carrot out there.
I think that so many people put the onus on the person who's not performing. And I think that my first ask of each and every one of these people is, but are you being the leader for them that allows them to go succeed? So, a few of those leadership things is like, if you don't know what their role is clearly, like you clearly could not tell them what their role is, then they don't know what their role is. So how do we make that clearer? Because it's hard to say that you get what you're supposed to do if you don't actually know what it is in the first place. And then as a leader, it's like, am I giving feedback? Am I giving timely feedback? Am I giving direct feedback? Am I giving like, there's so many of these things that if we're not doing that, we're failing our people. And then the storyline is often how they failed us. And so, we talk about, this is an EOS tool. There's different ways to look at it, but there's what we call a people analyzer. The people analyzer measures what, you talked about the seat on the bus. I also like the whole, like, we hop in a canoe together, and some of these people, like, we'll talk about the rating scale, a plus, minus, and minus. The pluses are those people who are sitting in the boat and they're rowing the same direction. The plus minuses are the ones sitting there and their oars are kind of just dragging in the water and they're along for the ride. The minuses are the ones who are actively sitting in the boat and rowing the wrong direction. And so we talk about, you talk about those seats. So what we end up doing is we measure people if they're the right people. So right people is their value system, their core values. Uh, we're not in the business of changing people. That's not the business. Let's say I let's use I sell power equipment. I'm in the business of selling power equipment. I'm not in the business of changing human behavior. Now, that may happen along the way, but that's not my job. So what do I need to do is I need to just hire people who fit the value system in the first place. And we measure them against those values, and that determines if, as a human, they're the right person. And then the seat component we measure on, do they understand their role in the first place? Do they have the desire to show up and actually do it on a day-to-day basis? And then do they actually have the capability, whether it's intellectually, whatever it is, to then get the job done? So now we're measuring, are they a good person? And then two, are they actually filling the seat they're asked to fill correctly and doing a good job? So, those tools are the things we work with on identifying some of those deficiencies. Why aren't they doing their job? Do they even know what they're supposed to do in the first place?
I think that's a big thing, right, Blake? I mean, I can speak from my businesses personally, right? As a small business owner, you don't just have one individual sometimes that has one clear job. It takes a lot of us to do a lot of different shit. So, it might be, you got to come up with a clear role for this individual so they know what your expectation is. If you hire them as an administrative assistant, but then you're expecting them to, you know, answer the phones and prep your meetings for you and everything else, it's like, whoa, I didn't know what I signed up for. You put on the website that it was an administrative assistant, right? So I think that's a good reminder for all of us that are smaller business owners to say, hey, again, the onus is on you a little bit to give the full spectrum of what this job really is and entails.
And things might change. I mean, they really do. But so I want you to think of an equation for me here. So, Landon, were you good at math?
Yeah, okay.
He
Okay.
has he has software for that these
Yeah.
days.
So, so we're gonna plug in, instead of numbers, we're gonna use words, but it works just like a typical math equation. And the equation is the level of frustration that anyone is feeling is equal to the level of their expectations minus reality. So when you're talking about this person is their frustration will be really high if their expectation was that they came in to be an administrative assistant, and reality is you have them answering phones and running errands for you. Same thing. Hey, my frustration is high. Why? Because you hosted for a warehouse logistics manager, and reality is you have me serving as a mechanic right now. Why would their expectation, like, why would their frustration not be high? So what gets frustration low is when expectation and reality are equal. So what we need to do is, one, set clear expectations, and then two, as best as possible, make reality meet those expectations. And otherwise, yeah, it results in high levels of frustration.
Earlier, you mentioned something to the effect of as the leader, like what have you done to, empower, the team? Have you come across Jocko Willink's books, Extreme Ownership and the Dichotomy of Leadership?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's probably been 7 or 8 years since I read it, but yeah, of course.
Yeah, I just think it's a good book to like anytime I come across a scenario similar to what you referenced, I'm always like, hey, read this book, please. And there's like aha moments, where it's, hey, if something's going on with this employee or this team member, like make it your fault, because once it's your fault, you can work to fix it. But if you're playing the blame game. You can't fix it. You only replace it, and then you find yourself a few months later dealing with the same thing. So that's all I wanted to say there. But I want to go back to something at the very beginning because I've struggled with this in some of the folks that I've worked with. And you said one of the first things you need to do is understand what your North Star is, like what is that goal? And then right after that, you made mention of understanding the mission and the values and the vision.
Yeah.
And as business owners tend to be uh, able to implement and tactically do things to help grow the business. I've experienced on my end in working with some of those folks that there's resistance in doing, I'll call it the touchy-feely stuff. So I have a two-part question. One is how important is that? And two is where do they start if they're like, I, I don't know, like what sort of tools, exercises, things like that can they implement to move the ball forward with mission, vision, and values?
Yeah, I'm gonna start with the North Star piece first. And because this is usually a fun piece of the facilitation work I get to do. And so one of the things that I like to use as a point of reference is, okay, do you have kids? Yeah, I do. Okay. Well, how old are your kids? 7 and 5. Okay. So I want to re-ask the exact question I just asked you, which is where do you see yourself in 7 to 10 years, and use this as a point of reference. Your child is now going into their senior year. They're about to go to college. Maybe they're considering working in your business. Your other child, they're just about ready to drive. They're going to be doing all those things. Take a second and just think, what do you want your life to look like at this point? What do you want the business to look like at that point in time? And like I told you, there's no right or wrong, but sometimes you get them to go, oh, I really want to attend all of their events. Oh, I really, want to be able to visit them whatever college they choose to go to. Or, oh, I would love to groom them to come into the business. Well, all of a sudden, when you start answering those questions, it gives way more clarity on the things that matter most to you and the team. And now that helps set that much, much clearer. Now, what I think matters within that is not the, oh, we're going to be $100 million company. It's going to make this much money. Those are really good data points to have in there so we can see if we're making progress on it. But it's the story. We know marketing. It's the story that actually makes people care about it and buy in. And this is that touchy-feely thing that you kind of talked about, which is if I came into the business and my goal is, think of Wolf of Wall Street, the culture that it's going to create. My job is to come in here and we are going to make as much money as possible and all of these things. I guarantee you, without a deeper, more fulfilling aspect to why you're doing what you're doing, the whole buy-in thing, the whole I want to come to work and enjoy this, the culture I'm creating, it is not going to exist or it is not sustainable. And so those touchy-feely things you talk about are the things that actually hit, the heartstrings. And these people leave their family every single day to come work for you. They give more time to you to help make provide the necessary things for their family than the time that they get to spend with their family away. Let's use a construction guy. They wake up in the morning, they're up at 6, they're out the door, they don't get to see their kids go to school. They go bust their tail for you all day long and work as long as they possibly can because they're going to go do overtime. They love what they do, all these things. They wrap up, let's say at 6:30, 7 o'clock. Hopefully they're not traveling. They come home. They probably have a kid's activity. They hopefully make it to the kid's activity. They tuck them into bed. They're tired. They go to bed and they repeat it. If they don't align to a company mission, vision, value system that is greater than we're here to make money, you're never, ever, ever going to help that person do the thing. Like they have one life to live. We have one life to live. And so just knowing that there's a bigger story and a deeper meaning to those things, it actually helps motivate people. In construction, one of those things is like, we build or restore the things that matter most. Why? Because if you ask any construction guy, why do they do what they do? The funniest story I can ask everyone is, if I ask your kid, how would I know that you're in construction? It's because when you drive around town, they can point out to every single building that you worked on for your entire career. dad worked on this building, mom did this thing, whatever. Those are the things we remember. We don't remember if we made $1 million this year or 1.1 million. We never will. It's those deeper things that actually matter in life, the connections, who we do them with. And that's why, I mean, I try to get business owners to be as vulnerable and as storytelling as possible, because money will follow for the right why, and people buy in for the why more than just here's the financial target.
That really hit home. What you said about they give you more time than their own family. And that's like shit. You have a very big and important responsibility to ensure that you're not just paying them, but you're inspiring them and you're providing them with a bigger purpose, because their biggest purpose they're spending less time with because of whatever your purpose is. So yours needs to be really big as well. That really hit home.
I
Well, I
work
think
with
you just need to know the responsibility, right? I mean, if you're asking people to take that time for their families, you better give them a vision and have them bought in and then execute, right? Give them some clarity on what things can look like down the road.
So there's a one of my favorite clients, and he's doing so well in life that he would never need to work another day in his life, and he chooses to work. And across all business lines that this individual has, his biggest reason for what he does, his ultimate reason, is to genuinely serve people at a level higher and greater than they ever imagined being served. And it's funny the verticals that they've gotten into, because it's like the storyline and the purpose all of a sudden starts overlapping. Whether you're selling this product to somebody, whether you're running a hospitality, whether you're whatever it is, all those verticals, it was all about serving people. And it's as you start building that why, and it's made everyone around him better. It's just created value for the city. And then we get to work on the other things that do matter, which are like, okay, but what is your exit strategy? What are the things that fulfill you outside of work? How much time do you get to spend doing those things? How can we start working you towards doing more of those things? What's the generational next steps? Who's your successor? Are they ready? Is anyone else on your leadership going to hit a retirement age where they need to be replaced? Do you want to sell your business? Do you want to hand it over to kids? Are they financially able to do so? Do they know that? The one that irritates me so bad is you aren't clear on when you're going to leave. You are not grooming the next generation to, whatever the case is, you're not preparing them to take over the business. You don't have the systems and processes in place. You don't have goals you're not cohesively working together. And then one day you're like, I'm ready to step away from my business. And it'd be like, there's years worth of planning that we should have been doing, or are they financially capable of doing it? So I'll give you an example. There's a construction company, okay? And like in this case, he's not a touchy-feely guy. So nobody really knows what the bigger why is. They don't know when he's going to leave. They don't know if he's going to leave. But there's been years and years and years of conversation how he's going to hand the business over. And he's in his brain saying, this is a gift to this next generation. I'm giving this to them. And on the other side, what he doesn't know is they're sitting there shaking in their boots going, but I don't know how to really run the business, and I've never been shown how, and I'm uncomfortable on how to ask, and I don't know what to do. So now they're saying this should feel like a gift. So I'm telling dad, hey, this is a gift. Like, this is so good. Thank you. And in reality, they're like, I'm afraid of failing. Now, all of a sudden, let's say this,
And they're set up for failure.
they're set up for failure. And so let's say that happens. So let's say, you weren't compensated in a manner to be able to truly afford the business. So what happens when you hand the business over is that owner is looking to receive the value that they created, whether it's owner financing, whatever. There's always a planning. There's great people out there for it. Landon, you guys probably know a thing or two about it. Is okay, well, let's say you hand this gift over to them and you haven't prepared them and you haven't put the systems and processes in place and all of these things, and they fail. One, family dynamic, whatever that looks like, that's going to be really, really hard. Also, the original founder, they're never going to get the value out of the business that they always thought that they really should have had. And then even further, like all those things coincide where, like, if you don't have these things, those are those nightmare stories that happen. And so I've worked with a couple of organizations where it's like, we made it clear, you want to retire in 8 years. You want to financially allow these people to buy the business from you, which means we need to do a phantom equity thing. we need a date before we do this. We need to, set the succession plan. Who are we adding to the leadership team? What new tasks are they taking? What are you giving up? Those are some of those facilitation discussions when I meet with these teams on a quarterly basis that says, hey, let's not dance around these things. Like, we need to put steps in place and talk about reality, because even if we look here and ignore it, it doesn't make it not real. Like, it's real. We got to talk about it.
Yeah, we see that frequently. And the last thing you want to do is hold your family or somebody hostage, your employees hostage, right? It's like, if they don't know what your plan is, that's exactly what's happening, right? It's like, so what? Are you just going to sell this thing to an outsider someday? And then all of a sudden we've got a new boss or a private equity firm we're working for or whatever, right? It's like, you're just waiting for the shoe to drop, and uncertainty creates unproductive people in my experience.
So, and I don't know how much you guys think about fear, but a lot of the things that operate, human behavior is very fear-based. And a lot of fear is just created by what? The unknown.
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
Yep.
It's the unknown. And what is the unknown? It's the gap between what I do know and what I don't. And in order to reduce fear in people and get their best behavior, we need to close the gap between what is known and what is unknown, which is what we need to tell them what's happening. And how many times have you been in a situation where, this put it from an employee perspective. I don't know what my bonus is going to be, but I'm telling myself that it's going to be terrible, even though I've worked so hard. And I'm going to go sit in that meeting with my boss, and they're just going to come in and be like, "This is way lower." And all of a sudden, that storytelling. Well, how do you reduce the storytelling? Again, you reduce that unknown, right? The stories happen with the unknown. So you're right. Why are people just not telling it? And
It's
I
the
don't know.
Clark Griswold Jelly of the Month Club bonus, right? Like, people would rather know, even if it's not what they want to hear, right? It's once it's at least on the table, then we can have a discussion about it and go from there.
Right. Yeah, it's I think there's a fear of transparency. So I could talk a little bit about the process and how this
There is a
works.
fear of transparency for us business owners, I think, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know personally, it's like, well, what if they know what we're putting to the bottom line, that they're going to come after me. It's like, well, again, if you created an appropriate culture where everyone shares in the fruitfulness of the business, I don't think that should be a fear.
Yeah, so I'll talk very high level process and then talk about how that financial transparency actually can take a weight off of people's shoulders. So what I do is I sit down with the leadership team and understand the issues. I like to do just a 1 day kickoff. And the whole point of the 1 day kickoff is to build a little bit of the vision out. I'm not going to sit there. The planning's fun. I used to think that was the biggest thing for businesses. And I've learned that it just needs to get built out over time, because it doesn't necessarily move the needle in the day to day the way that they would like. So we do a little bit of it. And then we start working on execution, which is understanding meeting cadences, who should be in them, how we hold each other accountable. We set a few goals, and then we get off and running. So that's that kickoff. And then I really start. Oh, go ahead.
Blake, real quick, who do you have in that kickoff meeting? I mean, is this organization wide? Is this just key executives? Is this just the owner? Just so our audience knows, kind of give us who's in these conversations.
I go just leadership team, or generally the leaders in the business. And one rule of thumb is, if it is much harder to remove somebody from that seat than it is to add somebody. So if it's hesitance, don't put them in the room. And if you're like, wow, we really needed that person, then we bring them in next quarter. And so it's really that leadership team. We kick them off. I can always educate people on it after the fact. You just plug them into the system. It's good. And then I really meet people on a quarterly basis. But in that first quarter, I like to sit with them in their weekly meetings and help run that meeting for them from the start. So I run the meeting the first few sessions, then I hand it off to somebody else to run it while I'm sitting in it, and then we move forward. So that's kind of that hand holding of, hey, we're starting the process, and then I hand hold you for about a quarter, and then we just meet on that quarterly, because you don't need me in between all the time. Well, as part of that, when we set those plans, one of the transparent things is I strongly encourage business owners to be transparent about financials. And that's one that always makes the eyebrows raise. It gets them to sit back in their seat. They get very uncomfortable. And you started to hit on a few of those pieces, but this starts intersecting all of this, which is it's a data point that tells the people in the room if we're succeeding.
Yeah, it's a metric. It's nothing more than that.
It's a metric. We said that we were going to bill $1 million. We said that we were going to have 50% gross profit on it. And we said that we were going to send $250,000 to the bottom line. What do we do? Hit it, missed it, missed it, missed it. Well,
Why?
we can create an issue out of that to go solve as a team. So that's the clarity thing. The other thing is, and it's the buy-in, which is I want to know the metric that says we all succeeded because I know if I make this business successful, that I will be rewarded as well. So then culturally, if you're afraid of this, you probably have the wrong people on the team. And this is a really quick way to say they weren't the right person because, I mentioned this, we're a capitalistic society. If anyone's in business to not make money, I'm sorry, but they're not being truthful with you. So there's that piece of it where you can start kind of vetting if they're the right person. And then again, too, capitalistic means if they want to go do it, they could have gone and done it, but they don't. And so, yeah, you might get
I
some
think
push.
I think that's hard for us as business owners to understand because we have taken the leap of faith. We've put the personal guarantees out there. We've taken the risks. And we think that because we're wired that way, that everyone is wired that way. And you correct me if I'm wrong here, but like I personally don't think most people want that responsibility, right? So they're okay with tagging along for the ride, you taking the risk and being rewarded appropriately as long as they, like you said, kind of share in the growth and the production of what they're producing.
They want to be a part of something big. There's a lot of dreamers out there, and I love dreamers, but there's very few people that are doers who actually go take that leap of faith. And man, I've been in that before, right? And I met with a mentor of mine, and he's like, "Man, it really sounds like you want to take that leap." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'll take the leap when this, and this happens." And he goes, "Sounds like you're trying to find the net before you take the leap." And I'm like, "A good example." He goes, "There's a net, you will find it, but you will not find it until you jump." And most people just won't jump. And so there's other ways to go about it. I discourage people from being, manipulative of financials, but there's a lot. This is my CPA background, which is again, don't lie to yourself on your financials. So, hey, we have a 2% bottom line, but I pay myself an exorbitant amount of rent to hide it. Okay, well, don't manipulate them to do that. Let's just be real with the financials. Financials are data. Data is only as good as the story it's telling. Let's have it tell a consistent, true story, and then we can use it to make decisions. So there's ways around it, but I strongly encourage like the more transparent you can be, it's going to create the culture that I think you want. And if it's not, you just probably have the wrong people because the people in the room really, really matter.
I want to get even more tactical in the last handful of minutes that we have left here. So you mentioned that there's quarterly meetings, weekly meetings. You are involved on a quarterly basis with your clients, just moving forward. And when you first start engaging with someone, you're involved in the weekly meetings and then eventually hand it off to them to just run internally. Helps with your bandwidth, helps with their costs. I'm assuming because they're not, you're not involved as frequently. But it sounds like you've done a good job setting them up for success to where they don't need you on that weekly basis. So with all that in mind, what I'm curious about is where is all this stuff being documented? Is it in like Google Sheets and Google Docs? Is there software programs that you're helping integrate to document and frankly create visibility? Maybe you're spot checking and taking a look at stuff. Like, where can people document this process?
Yep. So when I work with the teams, I have a business plan template that I use, and I do it in like a PowerPoint type format, but it's it's two front and backs, and the idea is that's kind of their historical record to go off of. It's what I use to run the meetings to say core values. These are the values. Are we rewarding, recognizing, hiring, and firing to these? And if not, let's put that on the issues list. Here's our 10-year vision. Do we need to reset that? We're going through it and saying, Are we doing it? Or are we not? That's kind of building out that issues list that lives on that business plan document. It's my own created document, and I put it in your hands shortly after the meeting with all updates. Separate from that, though, I have teams take that information and plug it into that weekly meeting cadence. The EOS terminology for these type of meetings, which I run similarly, is what they call their level 10 meeting. There's a whole agenda, you plug it in. So if you want to go that route, the softwares that are out there is like the actual like EOS one, which is tied to EOS Worldwide, which is a traction company. There's Bloom Growth, there's 90.io. My favorite one is Bloom Growth. So if you're a big enough organization, that comes with a cost, it comes with logins, things of that nature, but it allows you to have that living, breathing documentation meeting type stuff in one platform. What I do with most small companies is I have a Google Sheet or a Microsoft Excel, whatever version you want, that's got the tabs for every piece of the meeting cadence. And I allow you to use that template. I'll just give it to my clients. I help them set it up, and then we run it that way. And so I've got, like I said, that business plan. You can use those softwares I mentioned, or I've got a template that helps you run it. I encourage business owners, when they're talking about running this, is try to meet same day, same place, same amount of time, same time, all those things. Give people a platform to know that every single week there's going to be a spot that we are all going to convene and prioritize and talk about the things that matter in the business. How many times do you guys both got kids, right?
Not
I
yet.
do. David does not yet.
We're doing everything that is required to have kids, so it's fun and stressful at the same time.
We're in the practice phase.
He's
And,
in the batter's box.
well, you're an
Oh,
adult
I'm
now.
swinging, Landon. I'm swinging.
Yeah. Got a short bat. It's hard to make contact.
All right. Well, this was supposed to be able to be sent out to prospects.
Yeah.
Oh, if my
I'm
prospects
teasing.
if my prospects can't handle this, if but
Oh, fucking.
you were a kid once too, or you got nieces or nephews, and how many times do you hear this? Dad, 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 mom, 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 and then it's the same thing in business. Landon, hey Landon, I need Landon, I need Land. What if you could say, excuse me, stop calling me right now, every 10 minutes and disrupting me. Every single Thursday at 8 a.m. for 1 hour, I will handle all of these issues in one time in one place.
Mm.
That's kind of the equivalent of this meeting. Like consolidate all the peppering over and over and over and go solve them in one place that resolves all of that distraction. So I kind of told you about the tools that go in it, but really what you're hitting on is there's the opener, right? The opener is whatever you want it to be, roses and thorns, the goods and the bads. What are you grateful for this week? All we're trying to do is reconnect a little bit. There's a data component that says, what are the KPIs telling us? Are we on track or off track? And if we're off track, put it to an issues list. Let's not talk about why it's off track. Let's talk about the things that we're going to do as a team to get it back on track. We talk about, our people, our customers, our employees, things of that nature. We cover to-dos. One of the issue solving came with a to-do. Hey, David, you need to reach out to Blake and set up this meeting at this time. We're going to check in and say, next week, David, did you do it? Done or not done, right? There's the accountability piece. We talked about setting those quarterly objectives. And then what do we answer? Are we on track? Are we off track? Are we done? So there's this cadence that we follow that removes that micromanagement. It gives people a platform. It puts the most important people in the room. I always advise, it sounds scary to people. Oh, one more meeting, one more meeting. Be like, this one well-ran meeting will make other meetings not matter anymore. And they'll be like, well, can we just run it, every other week? My recommendation is don't run the EOS normal 90-minute meeting. Just run a 60-minute weekly meeting. And if you get it done in 40, cool. If you need 75, take it. But like 1 hour, and then if you need more time, change it to 90 minutes later. If it's 1 hour and it's taking you 45, give people the time back. But people are always shocked of how many times it's like, oh my God, I now understand that I got this living, breathing document where I'm coming and talking about these things, that things are actually getting solved. They're getting talked about. There's actual follow-up. It's getting done. And they just start looking forward to having those meetings and actually, the product of what comes from them.
I've been looking over here. I've come across 90.io, but I can see, I mean, just visually as I'm listening to you and scrolling through this, I can see why you like Bloom Growth just on the surface, or at least their website and their the way they're positioning it looks pretty legit. Is there a reason in particular that you like them over others?
I've tried them all. I just happen to have used Bloom in the business that I used to work in. So I'll give you a little backstory on it so people can kind of make the decision for themselves. But so Gino Wickman started, Traction the EOS worldwide. The individual that I do a lot of my teaching and training off of has delivered the second most sessions under the Traction model ever. So he and Gino were guys. And so I kind of take a lot from what that guy did. So EOS Worldwide got acquired. It's now private equity owned. And one of the very first things they ever did was to start building out what they're calling EOS One, which is the software to run their meetings in. Well, 90.io and what used to be called Traction Tools were the two licensees to be able to do what they did. So 90.io, Bloom Growth, or sorry, Traction Tools got confronted and said, basically, here's your timeline. We're building this software from the private equity company. Figure it out. So Traction Tools rebranded to Bloom Growth. They changed all the terminology. They did all of it. EOS One was a debacle. And they ended up having to kind of go back to ground zero and start all over again, which they came back to 90.io and now Bloom and said, oh, we'll continue licensing to you. I think 90.io said, cool, that's great. We'll just take the license agreement. Bloom was like, we've already made so much progress changing to our own thing. So because they don't have those ties, they can just run it a little bit differently. And I love the product. Shout out to Nebraska. The founders are from Nebraska. They're actually out of Lincoln.
Ah,
Used to be called Traction.
Nice.
One of the primary guys was Jay Wilkinson,
Oh
Fires.
yeah.
And so, but any of them work, right? It's the same thing. We were just talking about what the background was is, I liken what I do to, thinking about it from a computer perspective. Maybe you're a Dell person, maybe you're an Apple person. At the end of the day, both of those computers have extremely strong, mechanics in it, right? You got all the parts and power to just this device is so powerful. But until somebody said, "Hey, put Mac, iOS on the Apple computer, or put Windows on this Dell computer," until you have those confines, the bounds, a true operating system, all that power is just unfocused energy that won't deliver what you want. So what I tell people is just pick one. Pick one. I don't know if running on the Pinnacle model is better, the EOS model, or the model that I do is best, but pick one, stick to it, be
mm,
consistent. Because the last thing you can do is have none of them or try to be doing all of them. Just pick one and go, similar to like the computer thing, right? Like Dell just picks Windows. They don't try to run both. Apple picks iOS. They don't try to do, just pick one and go. And that's what I work with teams is put those confines and bounds and language and the tools in place and then just be consistent because consistency is going to win out every single time.
boom. That's a
Love
perfect way to
that.
wrap that up. Pick something, be consistent. Before we do officially wrap up, Blake, one of the questions that we ask all of our guests is a book that's had an impact on them and just a quick reason why. And you couldn't pick a book, you picked an entire set. You had chosen the Harvard Business Review Ultimate Boxed Set, which at first I'm thinking to myself, yeah, my eyes are glazing over when I think Harvard Business Review Ultimate Set. I'm like, whoa, that's probably comprehensive and a lot. But if this conversation has taught me anything, it sounds like you know your shit. So please convince me why I should look at it.
Funny is from a time commitment, and I've got my VA messaging me over and over. So I help source VAs from the Philippines because it's now my thing is like, hey, I want to learn about this thing. Can you go do the research and kick me back the summary on it, which is fantastic. So also do that and much less of my own reading now. But the reason I picked that box set is if I told you never take that box set, throw every other book on the shelf away, you would, I promise you, have more than enough resources in that book to get you anything you ever wanted. So what they did is they took a collection of their most popular articles over the course of time and then put them into the book format. And if I told somebody to start with anything in that box collection as a business owner or a leader in your business, you can exclude every single book in that 15 box set except for the one called Leadership. Read the one called Leadership. It has whatever, 12, 13 articles in there. Some of them are really old, some of them are a little more current. They still apply. One of my favorite ones is about IQ and EQ. You're probably, if you're a leader in the business, you have some people that are leading the business that are high IQ and terrible EQ. Well, it talks about why it's important to have EQ as a business leader. And what's interesting about IQ and EQ is IQ can be learned in a classroom. EQ can be taught in a classroom, but you get better at it by actually executing and doing. So I can tell you all of the things to have high EQ, but the only way to actually make progress on that is outside of the classroom. I can teach you math in this classroom, walk out, you know it better. To understand, to listen and hear and understand what human interaction is, you actually have to go out and do those things. So there's a great article in there on that. But man, it's everything you'd imagine, and extreme ownership. I guarantee one of the articles talks about how that works. Making change management, being consistent, EQ, IQ, that leadership book specifically in that set. If you just grab that thing and read it, pretty easy read, you'll get some nuggets out of there for sure.
Well, you just cost me $196, and the box set will be here on November 18th. So in about 10 days, it's about pretty much the only thing on Amazon that won't be here same day or next day. So I'll let you know what the ROI is, but I'm sold. But Blake, this has been great. We appreciate your time, and if I'm listening and I want to follow along with your journey, or I'm curious to know what it's like to work with someone like yourself, where can I follow along, and where do you want to send me?
Yeah, so my website does a pretty good job. That's going through a revamp, but you can go to lifewellspent.co, and that's going to give a decent background on what I do and who I work with. You can email me, Blake at lifewellspent.co. I don't know if I can give you my phone number for all. I mean, if you want my phone number, I can do that. Yeah.
If you want to, you can, but
If
I
you
think
want
email
to,
and
I
website
think
is
email's
good.
fine. Yeah.
But I don't want it to
Email
be
me.
like I don't want it to be
Email
like a
me.
phone number on a bathroom stall at a
Yeah.
grungy bar.
Uh, email me, because then also I can have my assistant make sure that we're responding in a timely manner. With my cell phone, it's hit or miss. So
You didn't get enough political texts over the last few weeks.
yeah, glad that is over.
Yeah.
We're all winners the day after the election. So uh,
Yeah.
Yes.
email me, go to my site. You can fill out some forms there. Working on doing some cool drip stuff where can provide value through some email campaign, and just send some of these fun tidbits. Man, there's so many tidbits I'd love to drop out there. AI listening and summarization, hiring VAs, documenting in systems and processes through some sweet softwares that make it so easy. So I'm working on some of those things too. But yeah, email me, visit my site.
Like, what's
Awesome.
kind of the typical business, I mean, top line revenue that you're typically working with? When does it make sense for somebody, just for if they're listening, to engage with you?
So my largest clients, one of them will do $1 billion annually in the next couple of years. I've got two clients. I got a handful of clients that every year do 9 figures in revenue. I've got a handful of clients that do, 2, 3 million, but they're just hyper profitable companies. So there really isn't a great benchmark on it. What I really focus on is people who want to invest in their business and grow. If you're not a growth-minded company, you're probably going to hate working with me. If you want to run a lifestyle business, congratulations. I actually applaud you for that. Recognize it and then just stay in that lane. You're not going to like working with me, but if it produces a great life for your family, more power to you. Kind of a measure I use is less about revenue size or industry. Industry doesn't really matter. It's kind of more like seller discretionary income. And I think a good target just for my price point is if you're in the like closer to 300K plus on seller discretionary, it's probably a good starting point. But also, like, if you're not making money, that might be the best time to invest the money, because you might be going out of business if you don't. And so it's really hard to say, but that's kind of some thresholds you might want to use to consider.
Beautiful. Blake,
Love
this
it.
has been awesome, man. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for
Appreciate
having
it.
me.
And
Thank you.
for everyone listening, thank you for your time. You got plenty of stuff to implement, so pick something and be consistent with it. Peace.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care I got 'em picking up the